rid of that.
Ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this forum, and we are glad that you have come. The League welcomes you, and we want you to hear from these candidates. There are 5 on the ballot, and you'll see that one is missing this morning. But I'd like to tell you that the League is a nonpartisan organization, so we endorse no candidates or political party. Our purpose is to promote responsibility in the political arena and inform citizens so they can go to the polls and vote intelligently, having known something about these candidates. The League takes no position on issues, too. We would like you to know that. We do an in-depth study if we ever take a stand on an issue where we have determined that, this is what it ought to be and where it ought to go. So if you hear that the League endorses some issue, you should be able to feel that you can trust it. We are a membership organization, and so we're as strong as the members that are in it. And we do have membership forms over here if you would be interested in joining us. We have men and women in the League. So we hope that as you leave here, you will know something more about each of these candidates, and you will have an idea of what you would have to do for them, and how you might vote, how you would vote. This morning, our moderator is Rob Parks, and she is going to give you the rules and moderate here. We do take written questions, so I think you all got a card.
Thank you, Mary Jane, and I'd like to add my welcome to Mary Jane's. We are doing this forum today for the candidates running for the Central District of the Peoria Park District, and I will introduce each of them very, very briefly because they'll introduce themselves to you. Before we started, we drew straws, or actually cards, and Mr. Berhow is going to go first on the opening statements, and then we will rotate one person each time, and if I screw that up, I've told the candidates to remind me that I've screwed it up because I almost always miss somebody somewhere along the way. Candidates will have a minute and a half to make opening statements. All questions will go to all 4 candidates, and they'll have a minute to answer each question. And then they'll have a minute and a half to have closing statements. And we will try to end in just about 60 minutes. So we'd ask that you all turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. And we also ask that you not applaud any particular answer in case you happen to be working on the campaign of one of the candidates here. We have timers down here, and they have paddles to let people know, the candidates know how long they have yet to answer. It's kind of the standing rule we have is I'll let them finish a sentence they're in, but I probably won't let them start another sentence. And we will stop them. As Mary Jane said, you are welcome to submit questions. We have a few to get started. Please word your questions as neutrally as possible, as opposed to trying to present your position in the question. And we reserve the right, both the collectors and myself, to reword any questions that come before us. We also sometimes combine questions if we get 2 people asking pretty much the same question. And then to the candidates, please, if you can't remember the question that I asked to begin with, ask me to repeat it. I'll be more than happy to do that. And anything I've missed to the other organizers? Okay, then we'll go ahead and get started. And I would ask Mr. Berhow to make his opening comments. And I've asked the candidates to speak up so you can all hear them, because when the heating system comes back on, it's a little loud. You're on.
Thank you. All right, my name is Mark Berhow. I consider myself to be an involved citizen of the city of Peoria, and I would like to contribute to make Peoria a better place to work and play. I've been active in my Center Bluff Neighborhood Association for the past 10 years. I'm currently serving as president of that association. We have been actively involved in promoting neighborhood events that inform, engage, and contribute to our neighbors in the city of Peoria. We often use Columbia Park for many of our events. I'm running for park board as I would like to contribute to the efforts to provide Peoria with a safe, sound, and maintained parks and facilities for recreation, gatherings, and events. I realize this must involve the contribution of time and effort by concerned citizens, and I would like to contribute towards that effort. I've always been interested in nature and ecology, and I have worked for a number of years on various prairie restoration projects. I am new to the working of Peoria Park District, so I have a lot to learn. Thanks.
Next, Ms. Hill.
Good morning. My name is Reagan Leslie Hill, and I want to start by just introducing myself. I was born and raised in our capital city, Springfield, Illinois. After that, I attended Illinois Wesleyan University, and in 2016, I found my way to Peoria. Since then, I have founded my interior design firm, and Peoria has afforded me immense opportunity in the community aspect and connectivity of each part. So primarily, I work in preservation and historical homes and buildings. I also serve on the Peoria Women's Club Restoration Committee. And then last year, I co-founded, along with 4 other amazing humans, Urban Kind, which is a urban planning and design firm with a user experience perspective. So I believe that I can offer the park board a fresh perspective. I'm a single working mother that owns her own business. And I think looking through that lens can offer the board opportunities that we have not yet explored. And I am eager to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Montez.
Good morning, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. My name is Steve Montez, and I am a candidate for the Peoria Park District Board of Trustees, Central District. If I can just say a few words about myself. I am recently retired, been retired for 3 years after serving for 35 years with the Peoria Park District. My last title was Supervisor of Community Programs and Social Equity. My educational background is I have a Master of Science with majors in Recreation Management and Public Administration. Of course, I would work in all areas with the Park Board to serve all its residents, but I would have 3 main areas of focus. And the first one would be that the Park District serve all of its residents, a very diverse community with equity and inclusiveness. Second, the Park District has had in the past a history of extensive programming, and I would like to rebuild it. Third, the Park District was built, the Park District is fortunate that we had people with vision to serve, secure large tracts of land. And we need to continue the social policies and support environmental programming of its staff.
And Ms. Harant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, and thank you, the League, for hosting this event and those who are here and viewing. My name is Joyce Harant, and I am running for re-election on April 4th, and I'm here to ask for your vote. As I said, I currently serve. I was appointed in 2017 and ran for election in 2019, and I'm now asking to be elected to serve another term. I believe my background is very consistent with the Park District. I have a background I have a master's in community health, and I worked in prevention. I was the president CEO of Planned Parenthood when I retired, and I have been very engaged with public bodies, the Peoria City County Health Department, the Care and Treatment Board, the Autism Spectrum Trust Board, and other not-for-profits. And my focus is on environmental, maintaining our natural areas, our facilities, our programs, with really through a lens of equity, diversity, inclusion, accessibility, environmental sustainability, and of course, transparency, so that we can, and financial security. I think we can be proud of these last years through the pandemic and decreases in assessed valuation. And I think that we did that with financial responsibility, balanced budgets, and increasing our reserves.
Thank you. The first question will go to Ms. Hill. Should the Park District pursue more green energy alternatives? And if so, what should it be doing?
Yes, absolutely. I think green energy is the future. So I think to keep up with that, we need to be exploring all avenues. Obviously, green space is a huge portion of what the parks are. And I think wind, I know solar energy, and figuring out ways to incorporate that into our neighborhoods in a way that is comfortable for residents. I know that's a big topic of discussion, with solar energy being important. So I think a conversation with the residents and the board regarding how to incorporate that in ways that also feel very safe with such new technology.
Yes, please try to project. I know it's difficult to hear, and it'll be more difficult when the furnace kicks back on. So please project both for the audience here and for the live stream. Okay, Mr. Montez, let me repeat the question. Should the Park District pursue more green energy alternatives? If yes, what should it be doing?
Well, I mean, absolutely. The Park District should be considered a conservation agency with the amount of, first, because the amount of space that green space that we have in this town, but really that's part of its mission. And it's good to see that over at Lakeview Center, the Bonnie Noble Center, that it has solar panels up on its roof. So and I know that there's the state and federal government are offering to reimburse some of those costs to do that. The center at Singing Woods, the environmental center at Singing Woods, was built environmentally friendly with both its heating and its the insulation to conserve. So we need to continue those kinds of policies throughout the whole Park District as facilities are built or remodeled.
Thank you. Ms. Harant, same question.
Absolutely. The Park District needs to be a leader in environmental sustainability. I am the chair of the planning committee, and I made sure that we have an updated environmental sustainability plan. I agree wholeheartedly that we need to take advantage of the federal and state funding that's coming down for renewable energy, for electric vehicles, for charging stations. The solar panels that are on several of our facilities are there because I was one of those pushing to get those, and I helped in the final negotiations to make sure that hopefully we have an excellent contract when we sign that. I've been engaged with the urban forestry proposal with Trustee Sierra from the Southern District. We have McKinley and Harrison schools being torn down, thankfully. And this is an opportunity to work on more intense green space in the South Side. That urban forestry, nature therapy are very important aspects of urban living that really contribute to the health and wellness of people. And so that is a great part of my focus is to maintain that leadership in environmental sustainability.
Thank you. Mr. Berhow?
I will echo the same sentiments as my other candidates, that this is something the Park District should pursue vigorously. We do need to be careful and weigh. This sort of technology is expensive, so it needs to be counterbalanced by either a proper obtaining of grants or a proper income of funds. I would expand this even further to say the Park District has a great deal of land. As you all know, Peoria Sanitary District has a problem with water runoff. Why aren't we doing more with rain catch basins to use the park facilities to catch more water and get less runoff into our sewers? So all of those things could be in here.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to correct our timers. They get 1 minute to answer questions. Everybody had a minute and a half to answer this question, and then they'll get a minute and a half for their closing statements, just to confuse you.
1 minute for questions, 1.5 minutes for closing.
Correct. Correct. But everybody had a minute and a half to answer that first
It was
question.
pretty
so-
nice to have a
I-
minute and a half.
I realize it is. That we like to keep you on your toes. Okay, our next question starts with Mr. Montez. What action should the Peoria Park District be taking to preserve its majestic oak hickory woodlands in the face of climate change?
Well, I think there's a little bit of debate about the maintenance of the wood, the forest.
Speak up.
I'm sorry. Yes, I think there's a little bit of debate on the use of some strategies, but I think right now the Park District is using a clearing of some of the invasive maple, and then also using more, establishing more prairies in areas adjacent to the oak forests, so that the maples cannot take over certain areas. I mean, you can see some of them in areas, even parks like Donovan Park. But the Park District staff has to be vigilant in working in those areas and keeping the invasive maples from taking over some of the oak woodlands.
Ms. Harant, same question.
Oh, I agree with Mr. Montez. I agree with Mr. Montez. We have an excellent staff at the Park District that are, they do their best to maintain the integrity, but will we be able to overcome the looming effects perhaps of climate change and changing the habitat, changing those pests that can invade and harm the oaks and all of the hickories, all of the trees and vegetation. So I appreciate the question, and it's something that really brings home the need for us to have the strong leadership in environmental sustainability, and not just for the Park District, but to lead the city and the county and the residents of our area.
Okay, Mr. Berhow?
It's fairly straightforward. I think we need to control invasive species by actively removing them or getting them under control. We possibly need to initiate controlled burns as part of the process for controlling savanna areas, of which these are among. And then I think it's very important to consider propagation things. There are going to be losses of these trees, and natural replacement may not be as good as normal, and we may need to help that by working with nurseries.
Thank you. Ms. Hill?
I will echo all of the candidates in doing what we can, but I would like to stress the importance of understanding how climate change is changing our climate. I mean, not to sound like a pun, but working with what is organically happening, understanding what that is, and then doing things strategically to adjust where we can, but without trying to control it. Our environment is going to continue to change. It has been for millennia. So it's our job to be good stewards of the technologies that we have, the information that we have, but then also letting some of that organically happen as well. And I think the staff at the Park District is doing an amazing job. But I think staying that course without interfering too much is how we end up with what we are seeking.
Great, thank you. Next question goes first to Mr. Montez. What are your thoughts for the future of Donovan?
It's me, I think.
To Joyce.
Yes, you're right. I told you I'd screw it up. Even looking at the chart, I screwed it up. All right,
I'm watching.
ignore that thing that I just said. The next question goes first to Ms. Harant. Joyce, what are your thoughts for the future of Donovan Park?
The future of Donovan Park.
Speak up, please.
The future of Donovan Park, I believe, it should continue the course of becoming a better green space. This past several years, we, as a board, dealt with the problem and the project, the pavilion in the park idea that was brought to us. And I think we ran a very transparent process that enabled us to make a decision that really reflected the people's use and desires broadly in our community, not just the neighbors in the area. Donovan Park has since been designated as a level 1 arboretum status. We want to continue down that path and continue to make it a place that is natural and more intense for people to enjoy nature. And it's a jewel in the middle of our city as an urban green space.
Thank you. Mr. Berhow, your thoughts for the future of Donovan Park?
It sounds like to me that we need to kind of stay the course, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on either restoration efforts or making it more accessible for what people do. And I believe that the way to go after that is to integrate Park District work with volunteer organization work as to the volunteers that are willing to do a particular thing to help that park become a better place. But stay the course, but make it more usable for a wider variety of people.
Thank you. Ms. Hill?
Accessibility is important. I do believe it should remain a green space, definitely, especially because of its location. But continuing to look for ways to incorporate programming or opportunities for recreational activities to thrive in that area. So I would be open to any innovative ideas along those lines, but making it accessible and useful for the majority of our residents, I think is how we also have support in keeping it a green space.
Now it's your turn, Mr. Montez.
Well, one of the things I do as a volunteer for the Park District currently is I monitor 5 bluebird trails in different Park District parks, large tracts of park like land like Donovan. And one of my trails is there at Donovan. So I'm in the park once a week, at least, but I also go to a number of other parks. And turning that over to a green space, as they have in the past year, has developed an incredible number of bluebirds in that particular area. Now, that's in the middle of the city. It's not on the outside of the city. The importance of that green space, not just to the birds and the animals that live in that area, but to people, is refreshing. And I think when when the recreation trend started back in the 1800s, mid-1800s, the development, the importance of green space in urban areas where population was growing and urban development was occurring became particularly important. And I think we need to continue that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start this one right. Mr. Berhow, you go first on this one. What should be done with Lakeview Pool?
Could you repeat that?
What should be done with Lakeview Pool?
I'll tell you honestly, I have no opinion about that. I realize a pool that has not been in use for a while has maintenance problems that need to be dealt with. And then the big question is, do we have enough staff in the Park District to maintain another pool? And is there enough demand in pool use? So that just needs, for me, I need to find out more information about the use of pools in the city of Peoria.
Thank you. Ms. Hill, same question. What should be done with Lakeview Pool?
Not knowing all the particulars as to why it is closed. Not knowing all the particulars as to why it was closed, I would kind of echo Mark's sentiments with trying to understand if it needs to come back and in what capacity. A lot of urban, communities use water, but without an actual physical pool itself. So splash parks, things of that nature that from a staffing perspective, when you're talking about lifeguards, you have a lower threshold of need there or requirements for life-saving skills. But I would like to, overall, more broadly look at our recreational opportunities that we're offering, but if there's not a demand there for the cost of rehabilitating that pool, it might be better used doing something else.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Mr. Montez.
Well, I think pools are an important part of a community, really, particularly during the summer. But the pools that we have right now aren't being utilized as well as they should be. And some people say it's because of location. Now, there's a pool at the Riverplex that is not open to the public. And so some pools have to be made available. And I know there's talk about turning the Lakeview pool into a splash pad. And is that the same thing? What does our community really need during these summer months for not just kids, but adults and families to come to cool off? And so I think it needs to be considered, to be redeveloped, to look for funds that help to remodel it and make it a useful facility. It was probably the biggest pool that was being used back a few years ago before it was closed, of all the Park District pools. So
Thank you. Ms. Harant, same question.
Yeah, the Lakeview pool was closed before my tenure on the park board. My understanding is that it had lots of slides. There were a lot of amenities that the upkeep and the maintenance became unaffordable, and so the pool was closed. I think we need a community conversation about that in terms of a transparent process. We have pools that we can't get lifeguards for, so do you put another pool in versus the splash pad? I believe that we have in the plans a splash pad for Lakeview area. And so, there have been discussions about, is that a place to expand Owens Center? There's a very vibrant ice skating community that we have in the Peoria area. So I think it's up for me in terms of a community conversation.
Thank you. Next question goes to Ms. Hill first. How do you view the SIDS partnership, and if you're elected, can we expect you to advocate for more of these public-private programs?
Well, again, not knowing all of the particulars of how that was formed, as the result of that partnership, I think is a good thing. From my understanding, it was a pre-existing building, so there was not necessarily like new construction in and around it. But I think the result is a very amazing place that I frequently go, and then I can have the opportunity of kind of being within this also green space. So I would love to explore those options. Again, coming from a preservation background, I would like to explore those, particularly with buildings that we are not using or could be used or more accessed by our residents.
Thank you. Mr. Montez, same question.
can you repeat that?
Yes. How do you view the SIDS partnership with the Park District? And if you're elected, can we expect you to advocate for more of these public-private programs?
Well, I think and just my opinion, because I don't know all exactly, but the SIDS partnership leads to other discussions like whether we're going to build a pavilion in a public park. When you open up access to the public parks, where do you stop? Obviously we've started, and we're giving, and I think it's an advantage to businesses like SIDS to come in and use a beautiful park. But who else can take advantage of those parks? And is that what we want? The private agencies don't have the same goals as a community tax-funded organization like the Park District. So we have to decide whether those goals of that agency business fits in with the Park District's conservation and preservation goals also.
Ms. Harant, same question.
For me, the distinction for public-private partnerships is that we have really focused on those private partnerships with facilities that already exist, not building new structures on green space, which the pavilion would have been. So we had in Donovan Park an empty golf course building that was either going to be torn down or developed. And we took the opportunity to generate revenue, and we put out an RFP process, so it wasn't just we went to a particular business. And I think it's a very successful model. We did that with the IDOT buildings. And again, generating revenue from buildings that we were using just for storage, that were really deteriorating around. We had to close, okay, the Franciscan Center was another example.
Sorry, I was trying to read questions. I let you know. My apologies. Mr. Berhow, same question.
I would say an enthusiastic yes on my part. I think this is a great idea for utilizing existing structures and property that are underutilized. And if we've got a private business that would fit with the goals of the park department, that needs to be investigated and encouraged. I think if you go to Sid's this day, you'll see there's many cars parked out there. So that means a lot of people are coming to use the facility and coming to see the park. So I would like to encourage that more.
Okay, we've had two questions submitted, worded slightly differently, so I'm going to try to lump these in together the best I can. During the pandemic, it certainly spurred more people to get outside and hike and bike around the area. Does the park district have sufficient trails, bike trails, et cetera, and are they equitably accessible? Mr. Montez, you get to go first on this one. I'm almost positive.
I think there's only one park district park that allows bikes on it, and it's mainly because of the maintenance of a facility. And in fact, I can only think of one other bike trail, unless there's some. I know that there's a private one down on Detweiler in the motocross bike cross park there. There's one that allows bikes, and that would be Jubilee Park, because bikes are pretty hard on trails, and the maintenance that's required to upkeep a trail when you start allowing bikes, same thing with horses, I guess, is tremendous. So I don't do trail bike. I think that access to people with bikes has to be made. I'm thinking that the one is probably not sufficient for the program, but I think that it would require a lot more maintenance to open up another park for bike use.
Thank you. Ms. Harant?
The question was specifically bike trails?
Well, it's hiking and biking. Actually, one of the questions included boating. I decided that was too much to do in a minute. So hiking and biking, and does the park district have adequate facilities, and are they equitably accessible?
I believe that we have wonderful access to trails in our Peoria Park District. There is work going on the top of the bluff trying to connect pieces of property so that we can even extend what we have from Singing Woods back this way.
You're going to need to speak up now, Ms. Harant. So
I believe on the south side of Peoria, we are lacking in trails, and we need to be looking at that. And so in terms of equity, I believe that is perhaps more of a priority area for us to be concerned about. Not only all kinds of green space, but specifically with the trails. And I guess, I think this issue of maintenance and the capacity to grow trails is one that would be of concern, because we don't have.
Thank you. Mr. Berhow, same question.
This is a big concern to me. When I moved here to Peoria, I considered Peoria to be a bike-unfriendly town. It's very difficult to get from one part of the city to another safely on bicycles, maybe a little bit less on walking, but even that is a problem. I think the parks have done a pretty good job of making some trails available, but what I would like to do is see that the park works with the city and other private and volunteer organizations to better integrate pedestrian access between park parcels. To me, it's very important, and the greenway that we have already in place is a good start, but it is not comprehensive to get to the city east to west.
Okay, and Ms. Hill, same question.
To echo, I don't want to say this too much, but I don't believe that we are always looking through accessibility from an equal lens. Having the ability to drive somewhere is a privilege that not all of our residents share. So walkability is important for me, but also something that I've done in my private work with Urban Kind of exploring those blighted neighborhoods where we're seeing residents who don't have access to get across town easily. So with expansion of bike, not only trails, but just bike lanes, making our city more walkable is something that I think the parks could be very instrumental in pushing. So I think that there's still work to do with the amazing trails that we have. I've used them, and I do think that they are wonderful. But I think in some of our more blighted areas, we still have quite a bit of work to do, and I would like to see that come to fruition as well.
Thank you. Ms. Harant, this next question goes to you first. The Park District owns a significant amount of property, and capital improvements, major capital improvements, are always very expensive. If you had to pick the most important capital improvement in the Park District, what would it be and why?
Wow, that's a really good question in terms of capital improvements. Our Riverplex and the Golf Learning Center, we recently paid off the bonds. And this last year, actually several years, we've made large capital investment back into the Riverplex in terms of the pool area and the locker rooms and that. So, and the Golf Learning Center, we have been able, through Representative Jahan Gordon Booth, to obtain $4 million to be able to renovate the Golf Learning Center and add to it. So those are two major areas, and we're doing capital investments on the Glen Oak playground. We have gotten funding from the state, but we don't have it in our pocket yet. And
Thank you. Mr. Berhow, same question. If you had to pick the most important capital improvement for the Park District, what would it be and why?
So being fairly new to this and being centered at my neighborhood, one of the things that got me involved with this in the first place was the fact that Columbia Park in particular did not have a shelter that would increase its use. So I wanted to lobby for that, and as you know, that's quite complex to get on the list of things to do and how to do it. And I need to understand, as being a park member, what the priority is going to be. The truth is, Peoria Park District has a huge amount of property and a large number of facilities, all of which require some money. So it's going to require a need for a prioritizing thing, I think, on my part. And I think I'm willing to look at and listen to people who say that they need a use for a particular piece of area or facility in order to prioritize those projects.
Thank you. Ms. Hill, same question.
With my background in preservation, and I would say assessing all of the structures, and then starting from essentially the oldest and working our way from there. I often see where old historic buildings are left unkept for so long that then they become the only, I guess, solution is demolition. We saw that at Hale Street Church. I live right around the corner on Moss, and when that came down, I was crushed, but those conversations needed to have started 30 years prior. So starting those conversations when it is more of maintenance instead of complete rehabilitation, I think would keep those structures a part of accessible buildings that our residents can use.
Thank you. Mr. Montez?
Well, I think if you would talk to staff after years of fighting really for a lot of bonded projects, which is the capital improvement money that the Park District funds, is roofs and roads. a building really loses its integrity very quickly once the roofs are not maintained. And then access to those facilities by roads is incredibly important. And we know how quickly the roads deteriorate over just a rough winter, even a mild winter like we had this past year. So I would say that the infrastructure of the roofs of the building and then the roads leading to those facilities.
Thank you. Mr. Berhow, I'm sorry, you get this next question first. Peoria Park District staff are key to the excellent Park District. How would you, as a board member, relate to the staff?
So I would hope that as a board member, and I don't really know how the board functions, having only been to a couple of meetings, but it looks to me like that's a good opportunity to interact with the staff, that they are welcome to attend the meetings and talk to the board. And I hope that the board would have prepared staff meetings. I don't know, Joyce, do they? Prepared staff meetings? Does the board meet with the staff on a regular basis besides just the
I don't know how you want
meetings?
to handle this.
I'll kick that to her. I don't know, but that would be the plan.
Ms. Hill, same question.
It's a team effort. Just like being a resident is a team effort, we all have to be on the same page and we all have to be working towards the same goals. So ongoing conversation with them, if that's happening already or not, is important. And understanding what their feedback as well. So the things that they're seeing, the things that they're experiencing, and just having a really good dialogue that's ongoing and continuous, I think would make our efforts as a board effective when they are implementing those as our staff.
Mr. Montez.
Well, having just retired 3 years ago with the Park District, I still know most of the Park District staff by name. There's a few new ones, but for the most part, you know, we've had an ongoing relationship over those years that I worked with the Park District. I like to think they're pretty cordial. But one of the things that I would do, because my role, of course, is different, would be to meet with Park District staff, the supervisors, and whoever they would want to attend a meeting, just to hear them out, not to debate, not to discuss, not to present, but to listen to the staff and find out what their needs are and, you know, where they see the Park District going, and continue that cordial relationship that we've developed over those years.
Ms. Harant.
Having served on many boards and been on the Park District now for completing my first complete term, we have to recognize as a board of trustees, we have one employee, and that is our executive director, Emily Cahill. And we need, as a trustee, try to maintain a very respectful dialogue with our staff, but it is through the executive director, meeting with staff on your own you need to be very careful about that, because we have one employee. We have committees where we have wonderful recommendations and dialogues with staff. You see them informally before and after meetings, of course, but there is that relationship of trustee and staff that needs to be maintained, because I can't direct staff.
Thank you.
And that becomes a difficult position for
Thank
the
you.
staff. You're welcome.
I thought you had a period there. Okay, next question goes to Ms. Hill first. Do you believe the Park District has a budget problem? If so, how would you solve it? If not, why don't you think so?
I don't think it has a budget problem now. I think it is a stable, I think it's robust. I mean, we have quite a bit, I guess we have quite a big budget in the sense of our responsibility to use it wisely, and to continue assessing what we're doing to ensure that the money that is being spent is affecting the goals that we want to see. But no, I do not think that currently we have a concern, but that's something that it's going to be a continuous work in progress. And we shouldn't just rest because right now everything looks good.
Mr. Montez.
Well, I think at first glance, if you looked at the budget that's presented for 2023, you would see that the budget seems to be operating fairly well, a balanced budget. But I believe there's a number of grants that are underwriting some of the programs and projects that the Park District has this year. But when those grants, and a lot of them came in through COVID from the state and federal government, when those grants run out, what happens to those programs that you're running? What happens to those projects that you're running? What happens to those positions that are funded from those grants? And I think the Park District will have, and that's my impression, will have an unsustainable budget in the coming years. And so hard decisions have to be made to keep that budget viable.
Thank you. Ms. Harant?
I think as of this point in time, and we've been very diligent in making tough decisions these past 4 years through COVID, and we've seen some little bit of uptick in the past couple of years with assessed valuations. So the budget is more stable and we have built up our reserves. But we are facing, like every other employer, rising wages. Who knows whether there will be a recession? And it's rightly stated that we have grant funding for our youth programs, and those are not guaranteed. But those are areas that we need to be working in collaboration with the city, the county, and other agencies to be able to capitalize and take advantage of collaboration in trying to maintain some of the programming that we've developed. So I think we have to be cautious and diligent in what we do with the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Berhow?
So as I see it, and again, I'm seeing this just from a private citizen's perspective, the Park District is funded by tax income, tax dollars, by use fees for a variety of things, of which they have many, and by these grantees. So the tax dollars is probably going to stay the same. Use fees, if we could get more private investment in there, maybe we could increase them, but it won't be a lot. And then the big thing to me is going to be maintaining that grant work, especially as we make the transition from a fat period where there's a lot of grant available, but only if you reach out and get them, to a period where that money might dry up. It's going to be a problem.
Thank you. Okay, to the audience members who are here, I've got one more question. I think I've covered most of the topics that people have submitted so far. If you have a burning question, put it on that card and get it up here because I'm on my last question. Mr. Montez, you get to start this time. Does the Park District have a role in the walkable streets program of the city of Peoria?
In the past, the Park District was considered one of the partners that were at the table when issues just like this came up. You would include the county, the health department, the school district, the city of Peoria, and the Park District, because we have so many facilities throughout the whole city. We have not been at that table in the past few years, and it is a table we need to be at. We need to be considered a partner to all these agencies again, and we have an important role to play.
Thank you. Ms. Harant, same question.
Yes, I do believe we have a role to play in walkable cities. And the relationship with the city and the county, especially the city, has lessened because we used to take care of a lot of the green spaces for the city, and that has declined. But I think this opportunity, we can have a better opportunity to do this with this Southside Initiative, urban forestry, looking at an entire area from that perspective of wellness and health with the city, with the county, and with the residents that live in that area. So I think we have and can make great improvements.
Okay, Mr. Berhow?
I've already said, absolutely, I think this is a big thing that the Park District needs to be involved in. I believe the city needs a lot of work in order to make this a more walkable city, both for pedestrians, for people with disabilities, and for bicyclists. And it should be a no-brainer that the Park District should be at the table at that, if not driving that forward to make sure things happen. Because unless somebody takes a leadership role in doing that, things don't get done. And I've seen evidence of things kind of falling by the wayside in terms of the bicycle and pedestrian pathways in the last few years.
Thank you. Ms. Hill?
Yes, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, that our city should be connected in terms of all the players should be at the table. Walkability is extremely important, and it is the driving factor of a well-tempered city. So I think, I agree with Mr. Berhow in the fact that we should be driving that because of what the Parks and Recreation is. Like that is what our role is, and we should be advocating for those things. So I think increased conversations, ongoing conversations regarding that should be happening and taking place. And yes, walkability should trump even drivability, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Last question. I knew I could get one more out of you. What is your perspective on, or your thoughts on protecting the Springdale Savannah permanently, having the Park District protect the Springdale Savannah permanently? Ms. Harant?
In last year, the intergovernmental agreement between the Park District, the city, and the county was renegotiated. And I was appointed to the Springdale Authority, and it was my idea that we tie the new agreement to have a provision that historic Savannah would be turned over to the Peoria Park District, and an agreement be made between the authority and the Park District so that we could have future protection for that Savannah, because the Park District would take over the deed of the property. And so I am pleased that we are working towards that, and hopefully this spring we will be able to finish that job, because we have had so many advocates to protect that Savannah.
Thank you.
And now we will have accomplished it.
Mr. Berhow?
I will echo Joyce's words on that. The Park District would probably be the best steward for that property, and anything that I can do to help that happen, I will do.
Ms. Hill?
I agree that the parks have the ability to do that and to protect it, even more so than the city or the county. So I think that happening is a good thing. And, I would agree in terms of support, if that's still going on when, the new term starts. If I am elected, I would support wholeheartedly, because that is very, very important.
Mr. Montez?
The Springdale Cemetery is just right in the heart along that.
Speak up, please.
It's the Springdale Cemetery, of course, is in the heart of the city there along the bluff. And it's a tremendous trail for wildlife going through the city. The Savannah should be protected, and the city, the Park District, and the county should work to find funding that helps the Park District continue its supervision of that area. And I know Springdale has a wonderful volunteer base to work with, and the Park District is used to working with those volunteer groups.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for closing statements, and what I'm going to do is flip the orders. Otherwise, if by virtue of my little chart here, Mr. Berhow would start with his closing statement, but I'm going to switch that and have Ms. Harant start, and then since you were first the first time, you get to be first this time. they have a minute and a half for closing statements. So you're on, Ms. Harant.
Thank you. And thank you to the league and those who are
Speak up,
listening,
please.
and I will try to yell, but this is about as good as it gets. I believe that, and I'm here asking for your vote on April 4th for another term. I believe that I have served the interests of the public. I have promoted transparency to be able to hear. I've worked with Mark with Columbia Park, trying to work towards getting that shelter. But I believe I want to continue some of the focus that I've had, and diversity, equity, inclusion is key work that I want to continue on the Park District Board in our contracting and our workforce, because that will help Peoria from the ground up. I think senior programming is something that we have to improve our focus on, that we have an aging population, and we need to pay attention to that, and I think it has sort of gone into the background a bit. Our work with youth development and prevention, along with urban forestry and nature therapy, I think can be such a benefit for health and wellness in our area. I want to continue the work for the renewable energy, the charging stations, and expanding the pickleball program.
Thank you. Mr. Montez, closing statement.
A peculiar thing about this facility is that this was probably one of the first sites that the Park District offered pickleball in this gym. We had somebody that came back. We ran aerobics and exercise and social programs, and somebody came back from Florida playing pickleball. And they set up a court in here and made a demonstration in this church. Well, you know, I have worked for the Parks District for 35 years. And I worked with a staff that was the Gold Medal Award winner. That is the top park district in the nation 3 times in 16 years. When I'm retired, but I'm not done with serving this community. My wife tells me that when I speak of the Park District, whatever my comments, I speak like about us or we, and I still feel like I'm part of the Park District, and I would like to continue my service to this agency, to this community. Between my work experience and my professional training, I believe I am uniquely qualified for the position of Park Board Trustee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hill, minute and a half.
Yes. Again, my name is Reagan Leslie Hill, and I am asking for your vote on April 4th. Again, I think that my professional background in preservation and urban planning from a user experience will be highly important as we face these very new issues that are coming regarding budget, regarding kind of the drying up of this grant balloon that we're experiencing right now. And I think having a fresh perspective when it comes to, you know, I'm a mother, I think I've mentioned that, to a 5-year-old. So using our facilities, using our programming, I think looking for innovative ways of incorporating and giving accessibility to all is one of my goals. One idea that I had, my daughter rides horses. She rides in Brimfield, which is 20 miles away. How can we get things like that closer to our community and given opportunities for introducing things that our children readily wouldn't have access to. So I am always in the pursuit of innovative and creative solutions, having an ongoing dialogue with all of the stakeholders, all of our community members, residents, is important and something that I've done in the past, and I continue and hope to continue if elected. So thank you again.
Thank you. Mr. Berhow.
So my name is Mark Berhow. I'm running for the board as a concerned citizen. Would like to be able to contribute. I'm recently retired, a scientist from the Ag Lab. I would like to work towards these goals as a member of the board. I want to encourage, develop, and support volunteer efforts and activities, especially those that help to improve and maintain the parks. Provide more support to community volunteer efforts and to enhance their ability to contribute to the use of the parks. I want to enhance and develop two-way partners with our neighborhood associations. I think that's a key, because those are the people that are actively involved, that would be willing to do things and would possibly get the word out to their neighborhood associations about the things that the park does. As I already noted, I want to improve pedestrian and bicycle corridors in the greater Peoria area, improve the interaction with civic and private organizations, and as I noted, I think the Park District should take a lead in that. I want to listen to representatives, to park users, and utilize our resources and preserve our assets as best we can. And then sustain Park District properties and facilities, optimize the maintenance and improvement of these park lands, develop, assess, and implement improvements, and then finally develop and fully evaluate new Park District opportunities, whether they are youth programs, senior programming, etc. And I hope you will consider me for your vote.
Join me in thanking all 4 of our candidates for being here today. I also want to thank all of you who are here in our live audience and anyone who is live streaming this. Please tell your friends and neighbors who live in the Central Park District that they can see this on the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria's YouTube channel. Who would have thought that League of Women Voters would have a YouTube channel? I would like to announce a couple other things. Our next candidate forum is on, I'm doing this from memory, so help me out, guys. March 4th at 11 o'clock at the North Branch Library for the ICC trustees. And then on March 7th for the at-large Peoria City Council members at 5:30 at the main branch library. There's a theme here, we like libraries. And then on March 9th, we will have one for both the Pekin Mayor and the Pekin City Council. I'm guessing none of you live in Pekin since you're here, but that'll be at 6 o'clock at the Pekin Public Library. Unfortunately, we were going to do one for the Peoria Heights Village Trustees candidate, and we have several of them who are out of town and not able to participate, and the league doesn't do forums where the people who show up are guaranteed to be elected, because it makes it look like we are biased on that. And we are working on setting up, now that there is a contested first district Peoria Public Schools race with Keisha Alexander and Martha Ross, we are working on getting one set up for that. We just didn't have the capacity, and we weren't sure that it was going to be a contested race. So please, those are all those invitations or the events are on our Facebook page and on the league's website on the calendar. That's lwvgp.org. Make sure you get the one that, if you're on Facebook, you don't get the League of Women Voters of Grosse Pointe, Michigan, because they use LWVGP also. And then finally, for both the city council, the city council race for the Peoria and the mayor's race and city council for Pekin, we are participating with the Illinois League of Women Voters in the Illinois Voter Guide, and there are little cards about that if you are interested in getting responses from the candidates on those questions. And then last but not least, I need to say thank you for these people who are sitting up here, not just because they showed up today, but because they're willing to put themselves forward and run for public office. And most of us are not willing to do that. So we appreciate, win, lose, or draw. I don't think you get to draw. Win or lose, we appreciate the fact that you're putting yourself out there and running for public office. And I hope you all have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Always ask for the vote. You didn't ask them to vote for you. It's the most common